need some glasses and a 16 font to read.
Hello.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Azra Kshamia. I'm the director of the Art, Culture, and Technology program at MIT, and I would like to welcome you to our lecture tonight. The lecturer is curator Anissa Touati, and her lecture is titled Imagining Communities Through Architecture, the Mediterranean Sea as a Constellation. This event is part of the spring lecture series, which in this case we are co-hosting with the Department of Architecture. In exploring and writing about the imagined communities, and we are also looking at the foundations of our own society and culture, and we feel it necessary to acknowledge the very real foundation of our own. We therefore acknowledge the indigenous people as the traditional stewards of the land where this lecture is taking place, and the enduring relationship that exists between them and their traditional territories. The land that we are meeting on today is the traditional unceded territories of the Wampanoag Nation. We acknowledge the painful history of genocide and forced removal from this territory, and we honor and respect the many diverse indigenous people connected to this land on which we gather from time immemorial. Anissa Touati is transnational independent curator who works between the West and the global South. With a background in archaeology and medieval studies, she draws inspiration from broader Mediterranean for her pluriversal work. She's currently guest curator of the 23-24 at the Museum of Art and History in Geneva and a visiting scholar at Brown University in the US. Over the past decade, she has taken on the role of artistic director and curator, lead curator at several international locations. She has curated and co-curated exhibitions and projects in many different countries, including Chalet Society in France, Paris International in France, of course, Thalie Foundation in Belgium, Contemporary Istanbul in Turkey, Bima Museum in Lebanon, Lagos Biennale in Nigeria, Broad Art Museum in the US, among many others. In today's lecture, Anissa will present 3 projects that unite art and architecture and that are connected by the Mediterranean Sea as a site of imagination, collective future, and interconnectedness. These projects include cycles of collapsing progress in Tripoli in Lebanon, Warché in Brussels, and Mare, a refuge for a Mediterranean nation designed for the Lagos Biennale in Nigeria. By navigating from shore to the shore, these fictional communities help us see the Mediterranean Sea as a whole, reconfiguring it as a constellation that is both imaginary and real. Following Anissa's lecture, she will be joined by Mohamed Amir Mezan, Assistant Professor of French and Francophone Studies, for a discussion. Mohamed is a philosopher and performer. He's the author of The States of the Earth book, which explores the ecological and racial history of secularization, rereading the history of Western modernity during the 19th century through the lenses of its colonial matrix and environmental consequences. And now, without further ado, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Anissa Touati.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Yeah, so thank you, Azra, for inviting me to present my work. And thanks also to the MIT architecture team who organized the event. And also thank you to Mohamed Amir Mezan for agreeing to be my respondent and open the discussion between philosophy, architecture, and art after my lecture. So the Mediterranean, or Mare Midi Terra, which means the sea in the middle of the land, conjures the idea of the sea as a meeting place. So with Europe to the north, North Africa to the south, Southwest Asia to the east, and the narrow Strait of Gibraltar to the west, the Mediterranean basin is widely understood as the cradle of Mediterranean civilization. So historically, it was a crossroads for ancient cultures, so Persian, Mesopotamian, Phoenician, Semitic, Egyptian, Carthaginian, Berber, Iberian, Roman, Greek, and Anatolian. So today, the notion of a shared regional identity still perpetuates, and albeit shifting, ambiguous, and open to interpretation. So being as much a construction of mythology, idealism, and a shared, if simple, aspiration for interconnectedness, as it is of political agenda, the idea of Mediterranean unity or the coexistence of Mediterranean identity still pervades today. So the Mediterranean has been a source of romanticized fiction, opportunity, subsistence, and despair, as a result of a simultaneous mythological and idealistic construction, a symbol of aspiration and interconnection. So today, I'm going to talk about 3 projects I've developed around the Mediterranean, or in the Mediterranean, involving architects, artists, Mediterranean communities, history, legacies, fiction, and new narratives. So I'd like to start by telling you about the launch exhibition of BEMA Museum in Tripoli, Lebanon, in collaboration with Studio Curart, which I co-curated with Karina El Helou, now director of the Sursock Museum in Beirut. And the exhibition entitled Cycles of Collapsing Progress was held as Oscar Niemeyer's International Trade Fair on September 2018 in Tripoli, Lebanon. So the general idea of the exhibition revolves around the notion of cycles, cyclical time, and the destruction and reconstruction of civilization. Several studies around time, geology, archaeology, try to explain the natural and historical cycles punctuating our existence. The idea of things looping constantly, even human action, is archaic. The linearity of time is a recent development of our modern society. Whether the answer to the loop is of historical or scientific nature, the real mystery to unveil is why complex societies collapse. So the reflection on the life cycle of civilizations evolving from birth to death goes back as far as the medieval Tunisian-born historian Ibn Khaldun, who wrote, from its inception, the living organism contains the germ of death. So the study of collapse of complex society as Egyptians, Greeks, and Mayas recently produced by historians show that there are several theories and reasons. So natural disasters, wars, and epidemics have whipped away entire city, but one theory of sociological nature can be singled out. When a society becomes highly stratified, it is more likely to collapse when the cost to maintain it's kind of too high. So if everything functions in a cycle, the human, nature, and even history, what are the limits of progress and what would be the cost of it? So the exhibition presented 10 newly commissioned works with a selection of produced works by artists from Lebanon and Mexico, reflecting on the human, natural, and political conditions in the past and present, which resulted or would result in a possible collapse of both systems. So the project was in collaboration with residency in Lebanon and Mexico, so Bar in Beirut and Paus in Guadalajara. So the artworks have been displayed at the Rashid Karami Fair, a famous example of modern architecture conceived by Oscar Niemeyer, a space in between states built in the 1970s in Tripoli, North Lebanon. The fair is a project by President Fouad Shedat, included originally 3 museums and an experimental theater. It ended as an utopian project for the new Lebanese states, since it was never achieved and functioning. It stands today with its raw structure, awaiting new beginning after having faced the turmoils the country has went through. So the different commissioned artworks analyze the contemporary conception of rituals, historical and mythological cycles, and collective memory, while at the same time taking into consideration the context of Mexico and Lebanon. So both countries, Mexico and Lebanon, have shared an historical friendship with around 6 million Mexicans of Lebanese descent living in Mexico today. So this has been the first significant cultural exchange between the two countries and offered a different perspective in the art, showing two emerging, promising and vibrant art scenes. So in parallel, as a long-standing partnership with the museum, BEMA and Studio Curac, with the Ministry of Culture, art installations have been on display during a month at Tripoli Castle, a site dating back to the 11th century, also known as Al-Qad Tripoli. So through contemporary art, the rundown concrete structure of the Rashid Karami Fair that you see like one of them on the picture there. So this fair is considered one of the most important legacy of the modernist architecture in the Middle East, has been placed in dialogue with the Citadel, a monument 2 layers of history. The two location current states provoked reflection in the context of the exhibition on the cyclical time and the cycle of collapse. The exhibition presented 20 projects in total, including 11 commissioned artworks as well as 9 produced works by artists from Lebanon and Mexico. The meeting of these two scenes allows for the exchange of geographical perspectives on the theme. So tonight I've chosen to show you 4 of the installations that were then in Oscar Niemeyer's fairground and 2 installations in the Citadel. So I'm going to start with the work from Zaad Multaka, who is a composer and a visual artist from Lebanon. And here we are going to see the installation is designed, in the famous dome. So, and this installation was named "Don't Fall because whoever fell will fall for good." And so I'm going to talk a bit of his installation. So Zaad Multaka's sounds composition and installation in the dome is inspired by the Aztec myth of the 5 suns, which is based on the idea that the world went through a cycle of 4 suns and each was destroyed by either earthquake or hurricanes. And the Aztecs believe that we currently live in the 5th sun. The title of the work, Don't Fall, is taken from the Codex Ximalpopoca, which has been translated from Nahuatl, the spoken language of Aztec. And Multaka's composition mixes the sound of the artist's beats himself, the noise of his own hair, and this friction, and the cracking of these two things feel like it's like you walk on ice, kind of, and it's kind of a chance afterwards. And its composition references to how mankind is gradually destroying the planet's ecosystem by engaging in an irreversible process of globalized industrialization and moving away from nature. So the ropes connecting the ceiling to the floor as an extension of the iron rods create feelings of confinement comparable to the human condition, although in contrast, a hope, a light is perceptible, what you see in the image here. So I'm going to move to another project that we have done during this exhibition, and I will talk about Edgardo Aragon, he is well known for his videos and installation reflecting the everyday reality of Mexico. And for the exhibition, Cycles of Collapsing Progress, he created an audio visual work titled Mute. And Mute focuses on the story of rappers from Tripoli with neither identity paper, no passports due to a fault in the Lebanese system. The work sheds light on the dichotomy between their very present voice and their very non-existent legal situation. So the project situated in the Lebanese pavilion takes the form of a walkthrough a cappella concert in which the public can listen to different rappers without seeing them. The conscious choice of not showing the singers brings the public back to the position in the performance lives. So here, we cannot see it very well, but this is so this is the Lebanese pavilion, and the artist also chose to put like a lot of light as if you were in a club. And the lights were changing all the time from red to blue to pink, etc. And here, so we are on the ground floor. And then, if you see there is small rooms, and you can just see through windows. And inside the windows, you can see like a kind of the shape of a human. And it was one of the rappers, and they were like singing, you know, with strong light and stroboscopic light like this, with smoke, so we could, you know, like even not see them. And they were singing, but without sound. They were just doing like this with their, so, and it was very, very moving, because there were those people without, you know, papers and anything, and they were representing Lebanon in the pavilion, who should have been, you know, like the pavilion from, you know, the Lebanese countries, if, you know, the fair was going to be used in 1980. So the installation also includes a video installation that only shows the female chorister, Shadow, in the Citadel of Tripoli. So here, on the first floor, kind of, you see like there is a huge LED screen, and here it has been filmed inside the Citadel of Tripoli. It was a woman who is singing, and we cannot see her. We can only see Shadow from afar, you know, and she was singing, and it was the only sound we can sing. So there was these rappers, you know, in the small room, singing without sound and sound and like singing. So this is a shadow reminds the public that the artists want to raise woman's voice above all others. So this replicates the difference game of light and shadow, symbols and prediction in Mexican pre-Hispanic culture related to the advent of a new cycle. So the Citadel, in contrast to the fair, is a strategic location in the region's history, a space that is a symbol of Europe's advance to possess or occupy symbolic geographical spaces like this, first during the Crusades, then through colonialism, then the modernist era, and now in the age of capitalism. And maybe I can show you a small video. I have one. This one. Well, it's reverse, because I don't know how, but sorry, you think it's because of the technique. I don't know how to do it. It was working at home. But, and you hear the voice of the woman. That's the rappers here, and the woman is, you know, is in the other LED. I don't know how to do that. I think it doesn't want to. No. It's not going to work. Thank you. So, yes. So, voilà. I'm going to show you another project now, and it's Lebanese artist. His name is Marwan Reshmawi, and his work often deals with themes of urban development and social history. And this work is named If I Only Had a Chance. And this work is a reproduction of the experimental theater, the most famous structure in the fair. And it's a building we have seen, you know, the first artist that Multaka did an installation inside. So it kind of allows the edifice to become a sculpture in a way. So with the material of resin, because it's resin, you know, here on the top, the architecture inside the dome becomes visible. And Marwan has been working on the subject of public spaces and landmark architecture in Beirut for many years. And with this project, he pursues his practice outside Beirut. And as the only closed edifice within the fair in Tripoli, his installation unveils the structure of the dome by opening it to the public. So this transparency is one of the reasons for the current state of the fair and Lebanon in general, which is in permanent statu quo. So public spaces in Lebanon are scarce, and the fair is perhaps the only ideal one in Lebanon, and yet, like many other public spaces in the country, it remains closed. So we are going to go through another project from Mexican artist José Davila. Is a multidisciplinary artist, mainly a sculptor, whose work combines ostensibly opposed materials and resulting in installation in which forces and form are balanced to achieve harmonious whole. His creations produce a representation of our doubts and own contradictions. So the artist's work is a visual and material aporia, an insoluble logical paradox, where we discover a coexistence of fragility and resistance, calm and tension, geometry and chaos. So this sculpture is named Newton Thought, is a reflection of the phenomenon of gravity, the laws of static and dynamic energy, the attractive force used to generate motion and compression strength, the potential for deformation prior to the rupture of materials, and above all, of structural intuitions. This structure works within its own logic in search of the exogenous center of gravity and at the limits of the resistance of the materials, where form is a consequence of process. So here, we worked with local stone. We were going almost every day to a quarry where we saw the rocks with the artist on site and with the help of local workers and also for the beams and etc. It has been kind of a real complete project on site. And the installation is stretched by cables that you see there overhead. And the beams are bracked on the floor by iron spikes that you cannot see because they're very little, and the whole thing could collapse at any moment if the elements were moved, kind of. So I have another one, pictures at night during the opening. And it's very big and huge, so when you are around, you can feel the tension and how it can really break anytime. So I will now bring you to the Citadel of Tripoli, the second site of our events. And as I said, before the Citadel of Tripoli is a 12th century fortress in Tripoli, Lebanon. It was built at the top of a hill during the initial Frankish years of the city between 1102 and 1109 on the orders of Raymond de Saint-Gilles. And so in the Citadel of Tripoli, I'm going to show you two installations. The first one from Ryan Tabet. And here it's a large sculpture from him named Colosse au pied d'argile. And this installation is composed of marble columns and concrete cylinders that transform the exhibition space into a field. So the columns are reclaimed from a 19th century house in Beirut that was clandestinely destroyed by a group of workers to force its reluctant owners to sell it. So the cylinders are concrete stress sample from the skyscrapers that was built to replace this house. And the work confronts two versions of the same architectural element, the column, acquired from the same site spanning the course of 100 years of urban development. Both the house and the skyscrapers have reflected different ideas of how life should be lived. Both have been extrapolated into ideas of how homes should be built, unbuilt, or rebuilt. Each has been used to usher concept of modernity, and each holds within their building blocks used and their own unmaking. You can see how it works, and also the dialogue between the ancient citadel and the installation as well. I'm moving to the other installation inside the Citadel, and here we are going to see Pablo Davila artworks. And Pablo Davila is an artist from Mexico, also city. In this work named Rhythmic Field, metronomes rest on top of mirrors, metronomes and radio. And they are set in motion randomly, generating a soundscape that will eventually and every day and then set again in a completely different pattern than the previous one, based on the change timing and certain individual decisions. So the works allow random events to function within the context of a control system. Thus, the infinite combination of rhythmic patterns are set in motion. Each day, a new event, never the same twice. During the month-long exhibition of this work, the soundscape and also the reflected landscape have been always different to each viewer. So it's an infinite cycle of patterns. So the universe is a symphony of different clocks, and we are nothing but melodies. I'm going to show you also, I have a video, so I'm going to try, maybe it works. Here is the work with only the radio, so it's a cacophony of different slots of radio from Lebanon, all together, and also from Mexico at the same time, and also with the sound of the city as well. So it was kind of like a discussion between the sound of the city and the sound, of the installation. Okay. And it was really beautiful, and sometimes you had the muezzin and everything, and they were like kind of talking to each other, which is great. So to conclude this part, I will say some words about ruins. And so as remain of beyond human-made architecture, ruins have always been an object of fascination. And the etymology of the term itself, from the Latin runa, meaning collapse, remind us that abandoned and decayed spaces bear a captivating poetry, for they evoke the nostalgia for lost civilization. Lebanon is rich in archaeological sites that preserve the glorious memory of ancient empires that once conquered its land. In Tripoli, for example, the ruin of the 1,000-year-old citadel is still haunted by the ghosts of medieval conquerors like Mamluk sultans and Ottoman rulers alike. A few kilometers to the west, in the capital of North Lebanon, the Fair of Tripoli, built only in the second half of the 20th century, seems to exert on contemporary audiences the same enchanting attraction as any ruins. But a visitor of the fair, while wandering around its deserted and incomplete premises, might experience bitter feelings, for the proximity of the recent past awakens the memory of long-awaited but unrealized progress. So this brings me to the other side of the Mediterranean, to Italy, to Baiae, with an ancient Roman town situated on the northwest shore of the Gulf of Naples, which is now underwater to seismic activity in the Mediterranean, and it's what we see in the video, and it's an extract from the video from Emilia Scarnulit, an Lithuanian artist who has done a movie on it, and so I'm going to speak about a bit of this town first, and then I'm going to explain the exhibition who was behind and everything. So just for you to understand, Baiae is kind of the classical Roman city, was kind of the hedonist Miami of the time, and its heyday, Baiae was a Roman elite's getaway destination. But some of antiquity most powerful figures such as Nero, Cicero, and Caesar were known to have visited the city, and a number of them actually built permanent vacation villas there. So at one time, this resort was a place of self-indulgence and was said to have been full of corruption. So what we see, and with what we have seen on the screen, is, as I said, is an extract from Emilia Scarnulit's video called Sunken City, which was used as a backdrop for the exhibition titled Warché at the Fondation Thalie in Brussels that I set up in September 2022. And Warché meaning worksite in Arabic. So this exhibition conveyed a reflection on our relationship to time as we witness moments on Earth through architecture and visual arts. So in the video I showed you, the artist reinvented the figure of the mermaid to discover the sunken Mediterranean city of Baiae. So as I said before, so in 1500, the remains of the once luxurious city were abandoned, and the water level slowly rose to the same volcanic vents that were once an attraction for the era. And an archaeological testimony to a vanished civilization. So Sunken City, the video of Emilia Scarnulite, brings into play the physical performance of the artist. Emilia is an adept of monopalm. She's a monopalm diver, and to better invite the viewer to meditate on the fragility of human society and project us into an uncertain time. So the exhibition Warché at the Thalie Foundation in Brussels was rooted in the history of Beirut, continued in the sunken city of Baiae, and Arabic geometrical architectures where became witnesses to a world that is future, present, and the past. So the exhibition was based in particular on the architecture and on architect Lina Gothmeh research. She defined herself as a new kind of archaeologist, searching through the past to write our future, and two contemporary artists, so Emilia Scarnulite, whose work is about the perception and historical influence of geological time, sometimes with the French is difficult, especially with major human conflicts, and Sarah Ouadou, a French artist with Moroccan origins, whose work examined the history of construction and the loss of architectural identities. So Lina Gothmeh took over the floor of the exhibition space, so carpeting it with locally sourced bricks, so demonstrating her commitment to this organically sourced material and to earthen architecture. So an ancient tradition in nearby Middle Eastern country and the Mediterranean region. So here on the picture we are seeing it's a part of the installation we had at the foundation, and it's just a gesture of the installer. So and Emilia Scarnulite appears so alongside as an intermediary between nature and technology, or between human and non-human creators. So the immersive sound and video landscape Sunken City confronts abandoned buildings wrapped up in myths and marked by decadence, with a mermaid figure playing the roles of confronting myth. Her work explores sunken cities with a retrofuturistic view of our planet. It's kind of a perspective of a time not yet come to pass, in which the human race has perhaps disappeared and where nature has taken over. And Emilia Scarnulite explains this as the ruins of human activity seen from a distant future. So in constant dialogue between tradition and modernity, also Sarah Wadou recovers illustrated plan of Islamic geometry and deconstructs them in order to create new shapes, kind of a geometrical alphabet. And in this process, she is inspired by architecture, written Arabic, and Berber symbol of craftsmanship. She unveiled also a new series of collages created from images of fragments of sky. Here, archaeology is ambivalently about disappearance and appearance, exalting the emergence of vestige, whether fictive or real. So the artists continue a research on the history of alphabet, which reveal the identity and successive evolution of a civilization. Also with the installation Je te rends ce qui m'appartient, tu me rends ce qui t'appartient. I return what belongs to me, you return what belongs to you. Made of Marseille soap. So these are columns made of Marseille soap. Marseille is the second largest city of France and is located in front of the Mediterranean in the south of France. And the Marseille soap is a direct descendant of Aleppo soap. And it's kind of foreign bodies, ceramic bones from the excavated object appear stuck in there that you can kind of see all over inside the soap. And these columns, both organic and mineral, are made up of the knowledge exchange in the Middle Age between the Arab Andalusian world and Marseille. They testify to the artist's interest in little-known passageways and found objects discovered in various archaeological excavations of the city and its environs, which in turn cast doubt or deconstruct complex stories about the city. Also, it was very smelly. So when you were inside the room, it was kind of like coming into you. So it was like, you know, it was kind of smelling the past. I don't know how to say it, but it was very powerful. And the brick installation is kind of an immersive experience of earthen architecture. It's a carpet of 13,000 reused bricks which covers the floor of the foundation, creating kind of an agora. So you can see there is benches, you know, around, so you can sit on it. So the installation is a kind of an invitation to come together, to think about architecture differently, to take the time to sit and reflect. And the sound of the brick on the floor clashing together as you walk across the carpet, like a creative symphony, echoes also the video by Emilia Scarnulite depicting this buried city. It's as if Lina had chosen to build anew on top of these sunken ruins and kind of proposing a new future, or inviting you to speak about a new future. And so Warché, the exhibition, addresses how we witness what happens on Earth, and as witnesses, that responsibility stems from our interpretation by the political or poetic, but also that through new narrative we can create new form of existence, whether real or fictional. And so the installation created here completely changed the look also of the foundation, and the brick benches included in the installation created a space for discussion and encouraged the visitors either just to sit back and meditate, or else an open space for discussion and exchange in order to reflect on the city of tomorrow. And we have therefore set up kind of discussion to deploy a sustainable historical and regenerative perspective on the city of tomorrow. So we invited Lina Gothmeh, Sarah Wadou, the artist who has done the columns in Marseille Soap, and the collective, architect collective Bento from Brussels, to discuss how to building times of how to build on times of environmental crisis. So they're both, all of them, their construction practices either on site or in the workshop question the sustainability of the production method and their impact on our way of life. They favor the use of materials that return to earth, such as brick, raw earth, mycelium, or workshop residues. They question the trace and therefore the circularity of material, their generative principle and recycling in relation to construction. So based on this observation, the city of the future is now being thought through the reappropriation of artisanal know-how, experimenting materials and using local channels. These attempts allow for a post-human and futuristic reflection on the city of tomorrow, where an ecological future is inscribed in the continuity of ancestral tradition and the path to imagine new architectural form by making a cultural heritage perceived in a sensitive way, and poses a fundamental question of how to coexist on a territory. Should we live or cohabit? So this brings me to the third project I'd like to talk about, which is precisely about how we live together. I'm just going to show you a small video, like a very short one. So Mare. Mare, a pavilion for a Mediterranean nation. It's a pavilion we conceptualized for the Lagos Biennale 2023-2024 in Nigeria on the theme of refuge, and which was therefore conceived with the Franco-Algerian architect Meriem Chabani, founder of the New South architecture practice. But first, I'd like to tell you about the birth and development of this idea. Because during the COVID pandemic, like many other people, myself, I lost the desire to do anything. And I could no longer make sense of anything. And it seemed as if at any moment our civilization could come to an end. And at the time, I was reading a lot of futuristic books. And I was deeply influenced by Afrofuturist writer Octavia Butler, The Parable of the Sower, like I think many other. But, so this book is set in a post-apocalyptic Earth, heavily, affected by climate change and social inequality. And the novel follows Lorraine Olamina, a young woman who can feel the pain of others and become displaced from her home. So this young girl, leads a group in search of a new place to live that we call a new paradise. And this book is a deep fight for survival, which leads to something much more. It's like kind of a startling vision of human destiny and the foundation of a new civilization and belief that she called Earth Seeds. So at the same time I was reading this book, the Lagos Biennale in Nigeria launched a call for entries on the theme of refuge. And the Biennale wanted to bring together artists and architects who explore how to create an operative notion of refuge that can offer alternate paths in a way. And this historical moment, we were living this in an historical moment of systemic crisis. So I wanted to create something in response to what we are going through at the time, but also in response to the Lagos Biennale, in the name of a fictitious country which chooses where it has decided to dock for a time. Always a place linked to history, myth, and mixtures between tales and reality. So this fictitious country that we call Mare a Mare, from sea to sea in English. So this Mare a Mare is there to develop new forms of thought and beauty by relying on original knowledge and proposal for change in each space that it inhabits for a moment. So this pavilion, this Mare a Mare, so was conceived as taking the form of a young child in a way, to whom we learn, to whom we give, and seeking kind of a welcoming land conducive to survival, creating a family community alike, where the home takes the first place. So the pavilion Mare a Mare leads its family to promised land. This was the basis of our thinking for the design of this pavilion for a Mediterranean nation at the occasion of the Biennale of Lagos. So Mare a Mare gathers a team consisting of a curator, an architect practice, and for artists that all have a particular sensibility toward ancestral practices that may be turned toward the future. So in collaboration, we each contribute construction element to the foundation for a Mediterranean refuge around the primary theme of home, access to water, resources, and collective imagination. So we have kind of taken this intercontinental basin as a key site for the exchange of ideas, and Mare a Mare is therefore a transnational refuge where differences cohabit, exceeding national identities, border, and hierarchies. It's kind of a breeding ground for future intersection. So I'm now going to talk about the shape of this pavilion and the elements that make it up. So to partner with Meriem Chabani was very important, as with her architecture studio New South, she investigates new ways to design, build, and represent cities of the global south. She proposes a pavilion built from fishing net, bamboo, and calabashes. It's like kind of local material. Fishing net provides a symbolic and material testimony to the theme of resources, connection between bodies of water and the substrate of a common territory. So the creation of the pavilion has been envisaged as a collaborative process, coordinated by New South and born out of exchanges with 4 artists who are going to have installation inside the pavilion. So I'm going to talk about that's kind of the images we took from a festival of fishing festival in Nigeria, where they're using a lot of fishing nets and everything, and we were like supposed to. We had to postpone our participation to the Lagos Biennale because, like, the Lagos Biennale has to move the dates of the Biennale, and we couldn't go in February because we were all already committed in something, work-based, and so for us it was a bit it was very sad because we couldn't build it, but we are going to build it, and we were supposed to work also with an association of women who were doing those fishing nets in Lagos, and they were supposed, to wrap up all these things for us and everything. So, and this is a festival of in Lagos, and those are fishing nets, but not in Lagos, but in Tunisia. But why I'm going to talk, because the pavilion is going to kind of like come from the earth. We are going to give birth to the pavilion in Tunisia finally, and not in Nigeria anymore. But I'm going to introduce the 4 artists we were working with. So here it's Leone Contini, and he lives in Tuscany in Italy. He imagined for the pavilion a device that aims to archive, protect, and reproduce biodiversity from the Mediterranean era and beyond, a seed bank and a sprouting house. So his intervention will include workshops, convivial and symbolic actions, such as the launching of a cucuzzas, a Sicilian calabash, stuffed with seeds into the sea, which is the only vegetable native to Africa, Eurasia, and the Americas before the European invasion. And also, like what you see on the image here, it's because Leone kind of worked on the roads of the seeds, because when you when you throw a seed in the water and the ocean, the seeds travels, and they travel from country to countries, and you can see like that sometimes there is seeds that you find in Italy who arrives, in some shore from from shore of Africa, but it's just seeds that you throw away, and so he wanted, to kind of learn, the roads of the seeds, all over the world in a way. So that's why also he's going to throw this calabash full of seeds. So Asunción Molinos Gordo, that's the other artist I would like to show you. And he lives in between Spain and Egypt, and research for these projects are based on the irrigation system of the Cap Blanc in Tunisia. So similar to the ocean Fogara hydraulic mode, which is a source of pure water, which irrigates the area and flows in small cascades onto the beaches below. So the local shepherd community built each bit network as a fundamental principle of proportional water access for the population and their animals. So she's kind of she's going to build a same system who is going to arrive into the pavilion. It's to bring the water inside the pavilion. Leone is going to bring the seeds. Asunción is going to bring the water. And Mohsin here is going to bring spirits, kind of. So Mohsin Araki is a Moroccan artist. He explores mechanism of cultural construction, the constitution of memory and collective imagination through a fictitious meeting between geographer Al-Idrissi and explorer Ibn Battuta and Hassan al-Wazan in search of a possible postal address in the Mediterranean Sea. So 3 men whose places of death are unknown seek a land of potential freedom, highlighting humanity's common desire to find a territory of promise. And then Zoe Paul, she's an artist, she's based in Greece, and she will revisit the traditional communal oven from the Greek islands. So there is a lot of communal Greek oven in the Greek island where you can cook your bread together with your neighbor, I don't know anything, a cake, and it's a place where you gather and talk, and it's a beautiful moment as well to share. And the final sculptural work will become a meeting point for people coming and going, and maybe it's going to use to cook as a fireplace and a fountain as well, an evocation of the communal ritual of food that seeks to bring people together once again in remembrance and dialogue. So here is a fountain, like Zoe has already done, but it's just to show you how it's going to be. So this pavilion, we will built in Tunisia with the support of a private foundation in 2025 next to Bizerte, North Tunisia, in front of the Mediterranean Sea. And we'll develop new concepts around the Mediterranean cultures and their influences. So Bizerte was a Phoenician trading post, then a Roman city conquered by the Arabs, later on by the Spaniards and the Ottomans, to finally become a French protectorate, and is known to have been a hotbed of resistance to colonialism. So the place that we host Mare is located in a unique natural environment on the Cap Blanc, and the northern point of Tunisia is at the beginning of a pine forest which spreads to Morocco, and considered as being the lung of North Africa on top of a mountain facing the Mediterranean Sea. And the program will start from September 25th and will last 2 months. So the pavilion, I think, act as an organization, a cultural ecosystem, so fostering a deeper relationship between groups that are generally considered separate and unrelated, and suggests hybridity as a potential root of a good community life through the lens of art to inspire care, cure, and action. So I'm going to conclude and with some words about the Mediterranean, as how I feel about it also, that for me, like the Mediterranean are roots of sea and land linked together. It's from the Mediterranean that China and America were discovered, and that the Renaissance from Rome and the Baroque from Spain spread throughout Europe. The Mediterranean is 1,000 things at once, not one landscape, but countless of landscapes, not one sea, but a succession of sea, not one civilization, but civilization piled on one on top of the other. To travel in the Mediterranean is to find the Roman world in Lebanon, prehistory in Sardinia, Greek city in Sicily, the Arab present in Spain, etc. So it's to encounter vestiges alongside the ultra-modern. It's a system where everything mixes and recomposes itself into an original unity. Voilà. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much for this brilliant and really rich talk. The problem is that it's very dense, so I'm going to, try not to ask too many questions. So the first thing, so hello everyone. The first thing I should say is that, I'm not an architect. I've been in conversation with Anissa, but, basically I'm just a philosopher, so I'm going to first ask and do comments, but ask questions along the way to Anissa to start the conversation. But I'll start with sort of trying to inquire with you and asking you questions about it, about in fact concepts living through the different projects you talked about and you presented, and. The first thing I wanted to say is that, I could say, and I'll try and ask you about that, about how, political and geopolitical these projects are. But I think, the thing I want to start to begin with is about concepts and conceptions of time, right? Because you mentioned Ibn Khaldun, right? Which raises this more or less classical, but also you deployed it in a very specific way about how to sort of trouble the very notion of the linearity of time or linear time, right? And it's interesting to bring Ibn Khaldun as a reference, because to some extent he's the first philosopher of history. So I would like to, in my view, this is also what you do, but like practically. So the first question I would have for you, so I'm going to go through the different questions, and you just answer whatever the ones that you think are the ones you like, let's put it that way. But I would like to know more about how you came across this work, and with Karina, I mean, how did it shape your project? What did it bring to the project? Which for me is something I'm curious about. The second thing I wanted to emphasize, I guess, is precisely about the project you talked about, which is the one between Lebanon and Mexico, right? So I have a as I was listening to you, and it came also from previous conversations. I have a sort of concept to propose to you, or an expression, which is architectural tricontinentalism. So I will explain why. Which I think explains also different things about Niemeyer himself and so on, but this is also something I would like to ask you, because I might be wrong, but So why do I say that? So tricontinentalism is in fact partly a North African word, which was created by Mehdi Ben Barka, who was Moroccan. And it came from the non-alignment movement, which started in Bandung, as we know. But the interesting thing about tricontinentalism is that it's a south-to-south geopolitics. So unifying or creating networks between Southern America, Africa, and Asia, right? So, and of course, the histories of of Che Guevara coming to Algeria and things like that, all these interconnections. The interesting thing is that geopolitically they've been more or less marginalized and so on. But when I saw this project, I couldn't help thinking about the continuity of this history, but that you kind of deployed via architecture and not only architecture, but what you did and the kind of exhibitions that you did there, which also made, because I think that the project was really historic, but it's also historic in my view because it's also linked to a very deep, so to speak, history. But if you could talk more about also, where Niemeyer's come from, the fact that he really comes from a socialist background. I mean, you don't need to talk about socialism, that's not my point, but the fact that there is also something about an interruption here, right? Because this, I mean, if I remember correctly, the Exposition Universelle that the Lebanese government wanted to do in this space was actually interrupted because of a civil war. So it's as if you were sort of creating, not only writing a potential history of what could have been, but really sort of making this history, this potential history again. So it would be great also to contextualize more, if you can, about that. Well, there are things I wanted to say about the correspondences between for example, Aztec cosmology and how it's used by artists such as Zahad Multaka, right? And how, in fact, each culture, so to speak, is sort of interpreted or even to some extent encapsulated in each other works, as if there was a sort of mirroring or a fractal kind of effect. But this is maybe something else, or will bring us somewhere else. But I had something to ask you also about runes, because I think there are different figures in what you said, the cycle and then the rune, right? Which really is also about how time is spatialized also through your work, or time is translated into space in very different and interesting ways. But there is something, and it has also to do with climate in your work. There is something that I think you maybe mentioned briefly in passing, but it would be great if you could elaborate more on that, is how runes are anticipated, right, by some of the artists you worked with. That is to say, they anticipate how our own civilization could become a rune, also, under the influence of the climate crisis. It's partly true of Scarnulite and Lina Gothmeh, so it's more, has more to do about Warché than with the previous project. But if you could elaborate on that, that would be also great. So I had something to say about Davila and so on, but I think I'll leave it there because this will bring us somewhere else. I wanted, so these are the final questions I have. What do you mean by constellation? How do you see the sea as a constellation? And of course, this brings me to the third project that you mentioned, which really is a project in the making, because from what I remember, you were sort of saying that the constellations come from the fact that from the circulations between these different places, and sometimes you just tend to forget that these places are connected by the sea, but I suppose there is probably more to that, right? And also, what makes it a refuge, right? And is it for potential refugees? Because I wonder why exactly the term refuge is important for for this project. Now there was another, and this is really a sort of proposition, right, about how you think of this Mediterranean nation as an imaginary nation, and it makes me think about a notion, and I wonder if this resonates with what you do, which is the notion of experimental nations. And in fact, some historians, anthropologists, literary scholars have actually shown that even nationalism, especially in the third world, was always linked to international circulations, but also that literature was imagination in general, was a site, in fact, of national building. That is to say, in fact, the kind of nationalism that wins and constructs a state is only one possible path, right? And in fact, before this happens, there is always a constellation precisely of possible alternative nations, sometimes expressed through literature, but sometimes expressed through various forms of imagination. So I, wonder if this resonates. So I guess last, but I hope not least, and this is really something that came to my mind as I was looking at some of the pictures, especially of Warché, in fact. Which is an exhibition I saw, so it also reminded me of how the space actually felt. But I really sort of understood how being curator and during the kind of work you're doing, how actually curating can act as architecture, right? Because how you combine actually different elements or different works, actually it's not elements, create another effect. So would you say that being a curator for you is, in fact, I suspect it's a yes, but how, in fact, being a curator means being an architect, right? In what way? And I guess, well, do I have other ones? I guess I'll stop there.
No, I mean, it's a shower of questions. No, the only thing, thank you, Mohammed, for your words. I mean, I'm working on the field, and I mostly work intuitively sometimes also. So, and you put words and concept to what I can't theorize in a way. So I would ask you the question you asked me actually today. And that's true, because I think you would be like more accurate to answer. Yeah, for some of them. Also, I will ask you one question. And you will have to answer first. Because you're going to put word on what I've done in a way. So
this is what we do.
Yeah. Now, first on Oscar Niemeyer, because as you said, Oscar Niemeyer is coming from this socialistic thing and everything, and what he has built, in Lebanon was also kind of like a figure also for the modern Arab society. And I know, because we talk about it together, like 1 hour ago before coming, and you told me so nice things about it. So I want to hear it again.
About Niemeyer?
About Niemeyer and socialism and modern Arab world through architectures.
Okay. Right, I will be very brief, but since you asked me, I'll do it. Yeah, no, I mean, I think, so we're talking about the actual architectural site, right, where the exhibition, the cycles of collapsing progress actually happened, right? Yeah. Okay, but so the interesting thing, so basically, I mean, when we met, we basically disagreed politically, and then we realized that we were basically doing the same thing, but in different ways. I mean, me basically via theory, let's put it that way, even though I think there is theory in what you do, and you by doing what you showed us today. But so I'm, of course, I don't want to sort of politicize what you do because I think it would reduce it. But for sure, the first thing that struck me with what you were doing was that it was really and probably unconsciously for you in a way that after what you told me, that it was really so close, in fact, to what was going on during the 60s, the 70s, in terms of these different exchanges between what now we call the Arab world and then Latin America or South America. And then, in fact, I didn't know, I mean, anything about Niemeyer. So I kind of looked, and in fact, what the interesting thing is that he started building the building in '62, which is the year of the independence of Algeria. And so he's Brazilian, and there is something about his geography which I think is completely linked to a geography of you know, third world liberation, so to speak, right? I mean, he was partly a socialist, which, I mean, socialism at that time was linked to a certain kind of commitment to this geography. So I, you know, I'm not an expert in this, obviously, but I have the feeling that it was a sort of hidden history or underground history behind what you were doing, and that since you talked about haunting and ghosts quite a bit, right, in terms of ghosts in the ruins, right? A few times you said that. I think that was one of the ghosts that maybe was there, but unconsciously. That's my point. But I, you know, can't say really more.
Yeah, maybe. No, I don't know what to say. I mean, yes, I think it's not really political what I'm doing, but I think unconsciously it is. But also, I'm always trying to show everything who are not like with a poetic way of doing it, because also without being too obvious or things like that, because you can say everything with beauty in a way. So it was, I think it's something I'm trying to do. And I don't know, like you were asking me when the project started with Karina, when we were sick of this. At that time, I was living in Mexico City, and Karina is a very close friend of mine, and she was living in Lebanon, and she makes me come to Lebanon often, and she was coming also to visit in Mexico City, and we find that both countries has very similar way of living through like daily life, but also in the politics, and how, you know, always everything, you know, like scrambles, and that you have to rebuild again and again, because, you know, you know, you build and you have, you know, and then something explodes, or then, you know, politically something change and everything. So it was kind of a discussion between two countries that are very far, like you could think that they have nothing, you know, to share, and finally are very, very, very similar. So for us also, it was so beautiful to make those artists working together, because there were you know, this kind of like encounter between the two the Lebanese artists and the Mexican artists. Finally, they were sharing the same thing. They were almost eating, you know, in the same way. It was very beautiful. And also, when I was saying at the end of my presentation, is how, you know, the Mediterranean, it's spread, you know, all over the world in a way. And I think, you know, when you talk about a civilization, and it's always, for me, it's an aquarella, you know, but I don't know, like here we are in America, and things, you know, vanish step by step, you know, from, you know, little by little the color change, but you always, you know, it's like you are visiting like I don't know, the countryside, and, you know, you take a train, and step by step, you know, the landscapes change. And it's the same for a culture, it's the same for a civilization. So finally you can find trace of a civilization from Lebanon to Japan. So we share the similar thing. And also we are a community of humans, and I think finally we are sharing the same energy and the same feelings all together as a human community. So so that's how, you know, the project started. The project started with Karina regarding ruins, and because also like the Oscar Niemeyer building is kind of modern ruins, that you can look at the Oscar Niemeyer building as you can look at today. It's visited that way, you know, as you are visiting, I don't know, like a temple in Rome, or it's kind of the same, you know, like feeling you have inside, because this building has never been used. and he was building kind of to celebrate modernity, to celebrate the birth, you know, of the Arab country without colonization and everything, but it has never been used, and he is still like a kind of a symbol of this Arab liberation movement and everything. And then I mean what Lina Gothmeh is doing, because she's from Lebanon also, and I mean when you go to Beirut, you understand that it's always threats of culture and civilization everywhere. So when you are Lebanese, you cannot live without that. So when she speaks also of architecture of she's not architecture, it's archaeology of the future. I mean, yes, she's building with all she's using material from the earth, and also ancient material like bricks, reused bricks, sand, and everything. That so she's excavating things from the past. So she's using the past to be built in the present, who is going to be the future ruins. So it's kind of also like this. So I think there is a correspondence with everything. When we speak about like constellation and the Mediterranean as a constellation, it's because, and when you are Mediterranean and when you go, I don't know, from the shore of Morocco, the shore of Marseille, Lebanon, Istanbul, and everything, it's like we are all like a pharaoh. How do you say that in English? Phare. Un phare. A lighthouse, thank you. It's like you have a lighthouse everywhere, around, and you are looking at each other and making like a like a sign of life, all over. And also, like when you look at historically, like all the Mediterranean roads of boats, you're going from another port to another port, and they were like kind of. It's about exchange. Of course, it was economical and about one country trying, to get another one and everything. But it's still, we are all having a bit of its shores on its shores in a way. So that's why I called it like constellation.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
A bit. A little.
Okay. Can you? Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. I have a question about, aside from the like dense synopses of the artist projects that you're presenting, more of your role as the consolidator of information or the curator. Like, I'm interested in how you describe this as a constellation of works. That I feel like that was kind of a footnote at the end, but I'm interested if you can like expand on that point, and also on engaging the site also at the critical level, especially the Rashid Karame fair, which is in many ways not a ruin because it is an unfinished project or not really a symbol of Arab liberation, but is deeply political in other ways. And you mentioned something about it not being political but more poetic, and I have a bit of tension with that, and I'd like to kind of challenge that or like ask you to expand on it, and also on your role as the curator of all of this work. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
No, I mean, there is really nothing political behind, so I don't know what to answer. When we started to do something like this, because, sometimes when you are a curator, you are just looking for just things to go together and a place. I'm always like working in specific spaces, so I always worked in very heritage sites or building who has a history. Because I don't like to work in white cube spaces, because I don't feel like building in it, but because as a curator, I need a building with a soul, a building who is not only, here to be kind of an archives place where you just put things, or just artworks on the wall, and that's it. And it was very challenging for us to work inside the Rashid Karame sites, and also to engage the artists, to engage with the architecture of the sites. But and also like to work with the communities always surrounding the Rashid Karimi thing in Tripoli. We stayed 2 months. I mean, even more. We have been like traveling back and forth from Mexico to Lebanon for almost 2 years, something like that. And we stayed 2 months in Tripoli, building with the workers on site and etc. We had a production team of only Syrian people who were there also, and we had to learn a bit of Arabic to be able, to work with them and etc. But I think everything has been conceived at the beginning without any sort of any political thing. So I don't know how to answer this question more from you for you. So yeah.
What I was trying to say is, like, when does the art go beyond like the pretty backdrop of like the Niemeyer dome or the Lebanese pavilion that by itself can be enticing for the viewer, and it's like in its bare state without an artwork, and what does the artwork add to this already extremely charged site, historically and politically charged site? So I feel like this question can't be, the state can't be really neglected or ignored. That's all I meant. Yeah, but thank you.
Thank you, Guida. Thank you, Anissa.